Hello and welcome to the City Limit Designs channel. We do laser engraving, plasma cutting, and some fab work, little shenanigans on mini bikes and whatnots, but hope you guys enjoy. Today we are working on a project for a local company. They needed a drain that goes in their existing drains. It's more of a catch, so small particles of metal shavings and other things are not going to clog up the drain system like it is there currently. So alright, so what we got going on here is this is the drain that I modeled up. It consists of a couple different parts. I can go in depth on how to use the sheet metal tool and stuff like that. We can actually show it in flat pattern, which is super handy for the plasma cutting guys. So what I did is I'm going to end up putting a bunch of slots in this thing here, and depending on which, yes, it's on a different file. So anyways, I go in the flat pattern, and then we export the flat pattern, or save copy as, and we'll just relabel it so we don't overwrite what we have. And then the layers, I kind of keep the bend lines on, which is these dash lines here, so when you import it in Plasmacam, you'll see that's super helpful. And then the bend down, depending on which bend direction you guys use. And then unconsumed sketches, I like to add there because we ended up putting a bunch of slots in here, as you'll see in the next part. So anyways, we saved that copy as, and then I did the same thing for these long sides here, which end up getting, again, a bunch of slots in here, which we can see it in our flat pattern. Yeah, so I did all these are just going to be cut lines, and it's basically so as the drain fills up, allows the water to still go out, but it's not going to let too big items go through. So this sketch is actually done on the flat pattern instead of in the model itself. Do that just because I don't need to show these in the 3D part of it. So when I save this copy as DXF, this is where showing your unconsumed sketches is super helpful. So I exported that, and then this is where I imported it into Plasmacam. As you can see, I'm trying to utilize as much of the sheet as I can. So I got just 4x4 table. Trying to figure out the best way. Got to do 14 of these. So we're doing a trial run of just one, but I'm actually going to cut like a couple of extra parts. And then from there, as long as everything's fine, then we'll keep on trucking. So as you can see, like there's dash lines. The video might not show it, but these blue dash lines are the bend lines, which when I imported it, we'll import. And yeah. M for move. All right, so when we import stuff from Inventor into Plasmacam, that DXF file, this is what it looked like. So these are those unconsumed sketches, and then these are our bend lines that we had. So from there, we'll go to join, which is J. And the only bad thing is sometimes it makes these cut lines, and we don't necessarily need them as cut lines. So we'll use K. We'll just break them. There. Now they're just in there as lines. As you can still see, it's solid, so that means our outer profile is still good. It's still showing it as a solid shape. And then in settings, this is where you guys will find the bend line conversion. Depending on which Plasmacam settings you guys have, like the configurations and stuff, I actually have the advanced stuff, so I can actually save different parameters and stuff like that. So as I change material, I can just like, oh, here's quarter. I'll just load it in. It's already set up, offsets, everything's correct. But we're working on with 16 gauge stainless. So back to offset and convert. So I ran a 1-inch slot. I'm going to cut some 1/4-inch brackets as well. I'll put that in another video, but you can see I'll change those up. This is just for hand bending. It makes it a lot easier if you don't have a press, like I don't. I just do normally just put it in the vise and bend it around. But so that slot length, the bend line, so these lines here in our part that are just solid white lines, those are going to be converted into a bend line. It's going to be 1 inch. It's going to have a little gap at the end, as you can see there, and it's going to evenly space them out. So now when we go, we'll press N, which is we're going to add cut lines to all this stuff, our lead ins and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I know I'm not on the table, but I'm going to say yes. Automatically convert bend lines. That's where we want to click yes. Holes inside. This one doesn't have any holes, but if we did, it would just show it. So here you can see these slots are now just going to be just bam. Machine's going to fire up, cut all those, and then you can see our bend line slots. I have a lot in here because, again, it's going to be way easier to bend this. It's only 16 gauge stainless, so it's going to be easy to bend anyways. And then two, when I put my lead ins and stuff like that, or my cut pass for the outside, I like to put them on a corner. This one here, you can see once I did it, like my actual cut, I did on this edge, so it's kind of more of a straight line in. That way when you nest stuff up, it doesn't intrude into another part. So you can get stuff as close as you can together. And I run about a 3/16 web, which is the distance here, which this one is not necessarily correct. I just was like, okay, I can fit all this stuff on here. But when you look at this one over here, this is that 3/16 web. So once my parts are all good to go and we do this test one, then I'm going to throw them all on here. So for now, after you get that, once you get your stuff set up, and that's, you know, you got your showing, if you hit F10, it'll show just the cut pass, which is pretty neat once you figure out all the shortcuts for Plasmacam. But you can kind of see what it's going to do, how it's going to cut it. I like to group it at this point, especially if I'm going to array it like I have up here. That way when you do that, you don't have to go back through and select all these cut paths and nest, like group them all together. You can just highlight a section and it's ready to go. And especially if you group specific part, when you go and do your cut preview, which is, I think, Alt-C. No, Control-C. So you can either go up to the machine, go to cut preview. It's going to show us what it's how it's going to cut. You can see it's going to cut all those bend lines first. And I actually have it set up to where it does less heat. So that means it's not going to put as much heat in the material. It's less likely for it to just bend like crazy as it's cutting. So you can see it's just going along, cutting all that. Boop, 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 boop. And I have two parts selected. So it's going to cut this first one out all the way. And then it's going to go right into the other part. So the preview is kind of cool. It's kind of see how the paths are going to do. If you highlight your part and hit F8, it kind of gives you a generic cut time on how long it's going to take to cut this part. As you can see, we have just one part has 85 cut paths. So that's a lot of start stops. And then, like I said, it's going to take about 4 minutes to cut this part. So, like, once you get into, let's say, this big sheet here, we hit F8, you know, it's going to take an hour and a half just to cut just these parts out. So it's kind of time consuming, but it's pretty fun. So when you get your machine fired up, always make sure you hit the initialize. What that's going to do is it's going to make a bunch of noise. And actually, I'll just show you guys. So as you can see, I'll zoom in down there. Listen to the head of the machine. It's going to make a bunch of racket, but it's going to home itself. So it does your Z and then your X and Y, which is kind of nice. So it gets that all set up and ready. So now we're going to get ready to cut our first part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video from here. I'll set it up over on the other side, and then we'll continue cutting. Now we're going to get into the fun part of actually cutting the material. So we're going to cut all this right here. So I'm just going to highlight it from here. You can actually go and click cut from here, and it's going to start cutting, or wait till you get to the machine as long as this stays highlighted, and then we'll cut from there. So when you guys are doing this stuff, always remember, ground your material with the clamp from the plasma cutter, because if you ground at the table, after a while it's not going to read, and it's just going to fight you, and it's going to crash, and you're going to be really, really upset. So from here we can actually just press start, and I have it set up to where once it's started, it's just going to keep cutting. So from now we'll just start it up, and then again, I run a water table. You can see the water barely just touches the bottom of the tips the way I designed it. I mean, it helps keep the smoke down, you guys will see. But for now, we're going to do the first part, and hopefully everything comes out fine. All right, here we go. Cutter's on, and then I run 2 dryers, just helps. And then, all right, I got the fine cut tips and stuff like that in right now. Got my little janky box fan ripping up there. So right now it's cutting all those bend line slots. So what I'll do is I'll set this up here. and then kind of let it play through. We'll do a time lapse or something with it. Alright, so here's the finished part. What I'll do is I'll pull it out, I'll do my hand bending, do a video on that, just to make sure everything's going to work out before we move on to the second one, because we have to make changes, we need to make these bigger, and we can do that now instead of sitting on another part. So we'll be back. Alright, so we got our makeshift little hand bender. As you can see, I had one side do good, no issues, everything was to the end. The other side, we got some things to take care of, like that right there. Can't really, I mean, it's probably not going to be a big deal, but I want to fix that. I'm going to put it in my little hand bender here. And then we'll probably want to bend side first, and then we'll figure out how to bend the other side. Alright, so again, that's why we do test pieces. Definitely gonna have to increase the slot length on these. Being a small bend, it's really hard to bend in the makeshift thing, so I ended up just setting it down in here and then just pounding that edge down. Now we'll take our duckbill clamps here. We're just going to bend the inside of this one in, the small one, because this is what's going to hold the other piece in. So I'm just going to bend it 90 on there, and then we'll do the same thing on this end. Clamp it on there. Again, we're going to keep our clamp not quite at the edge of the bend, but just in far enough so when we bend it down, we don't hit this other bend. Bend that in. Just making sure it looks like it's going to be close enough. Yeah, this is our first piece. Again, I just wanted to do a trial run. I'll probably might go through and finish another one just to make one complete set so we can go test it out. As you can see, it's just a little under 90, so we're gonna pound that back out, make it flat. This is gonna sit inside the concrete drain, so then the cast iron part will sit on top of it. And then we're gonna cut another piece that goes on the inside, the flat bottom part, and then I'll have some edges that we'll just tack in when we're done. So stay tuned. So we got our bottom, our ends, our sides. So slap it all together, kind of see what we're making here. So what I'll do now is I'll make sure everything's square, tack it all into place, and then take it over and we'll do a test fit. Might do a video on that, we'll see, but definitely do a welding video. Alright, so we got everything clamped together. We checked our square corner to corner, make sure everything is good. This plate is designed to fit just inside of this, so everything rests right on the bottom of this lip. So now we're just gonna tack it up. Alrighty, just got it all tacked up. This is probably as much welding as I'm going to do on it. Again, it's a floor drain. It's not going to be no weight on it. It's just there's going to be a big heavy grate over top of it. But everything seemed to fit great. So hopefully we'll go do our test fit here in a little bit. Everything works out fine. Yeah, I'm not using stainless wire. I'm just using regular, just a little MIG, a little Lincoln. Gets the job done. Holds it all together. If it gets rusty, it gets rusty. This is not food grade stuff. We don't have to worry about that. So hopefully next video will be test fitting this. Test fitted it. Problem was the sizes vary. So I end up cutting some strips. And what we'll do is we'll weld those on to the end. So that way it kind of seals up the small stuff that would not contain in the drain. I have some pictures to show the fitment issues. So we'll get this tacked up and hopefully everything works out. So we got those little tabs welded on. Added some handles so you can get out easy. Got to put some little filler pieces in. The new model will have all this bent one piece and everything. Worry about filling these little gaps and stuff. But final product will come soon after they do a test run. See how well they like them.